Aluka from Uganda. Based on the project that I carried out, it was all about aquaculture, as the title states, leveraging aquaculture to improve the livelihood of the youth in Teso sub-region, Uganda, and the outlines were introduction, aims and objectives, methodologies and challenges, recommendations and conclusion. So, the brief introduction about Teso sub-region. This is a region which is faced with insecurity and cattle rustling from the neighboring tribe known as the Karamojong, which removed most of the cattle, which has removed drought power, thus reducing farming activities, and has also brought about protein crisis. Then there is increased food insecurity and poverty among rural farmers. Then, based on fishing, Teso is a region that used to practice gang fishing, which has disappeared since wetlands have been encroached by rice growers. Wetlands are drying up due to climate change. Then it has disappeared due to reduction of fish stocks. So gang fishing is a state whereby families would come together and go fish in a particular swamp. So looking at the aims and objectives, the aim is to accelerate the development of aquaculture in Teso sub-region, eastern Uganda. Then the objectives here is to review aquaculture production options for farmers in Teso sub-region, then to analyze the performance of aquaculture in Uganda, then to make recommendations for the most economically effective production options for Teso sub-region. So first of all, what is aquaculture and how can it be achieved? So based on my research, aquaculture refers to the rearing of organisms in a controlled aquatic environment for commercial, it can be recreational or public purposes. And they can be practiced. The major ways the poor and rural farmers can practice to achieve their goals is through practicing it in ponds and then use of barrels. So one way of fish pond construction, when we talk about fish ponds, the construction process may be selection of the site, clearance of the site. Of course, selection of the site, that comes with stressing out for water accessibility. One can talk of the design or the shape of the pond. Ponds are always rectangular or square. Then, talking about the material, one of it is a site with 25% clay for water holding capacity, then 1 feet deep at shallow ends and 3 feet deep. Then acidity level have to be considered for the pH leaving of the soil, of the fish. Then fertilizing the pond, then stocking the pond, then fencing comes. Then for those who would prefer using water tanks, that one may be even the cheapest way, because water tanks can be recyclable to avoid or reduce environmental pollution. Then tanks can be positioned in places where there is water access or where one can easily connect the water pipes. Then when the fish increase in size in the tanks, one can easily transfer them to more bigger tanks. Then the major fish reared in ponds or these water tanks could be the catfish and tilapia. So in my research on how to take care of these fish within the ponds or barrels is by using artificial feeds such as fish pellets, chips, tablets, etc. Then one can easily use plant materials which are planted within the dikes for those fish that feed heavily, especially the tilapia. Then fertilization of the ponds using manure to stimulate growth of algae. Of course, algae is also one of the fish feed. Then other organisms like snails, worms can be introduced to build the ecosystem of the fish. So these are some of the fish feeds. the fish pellets and the chips. Then besides there is somebody trying to feed the pond. So what would be the social impacts if the community is engaged into these practices? We have improved health arising from better nutrition, improved social cohesion from peaceful coexistence of households. Then we have improved socio-economic well-being, then improved environmental protection. So here is the map of Uganda showing aquaculture activities and how they are done. So the pink color, or Roman number 1, these are the dry lands where few aquaculture are practiced because of dominating cattle activities. They do a lot of rustling, so they're not bothered as such. Then the green is the northeastern savanna, which is dominated by the Nile tilapia in ponds. Then Teso region mostly lies in Roman number 5, where they practice fishing fish ponds within the lake regions of Lake Kyoga. So then other regions practice like Roman number 3, that is northwestern savanna grasslands. They are dominated by catfish. So Teso sub-region lies in number 5, where a few people conduct aquaculture within the lake regions of Kyoga. Then these were the challenges faced by still those who practice aquaculture. So those who didn't face challenges were 2%, others 12%. Then fish mortality, 6%, were found out to be challenging to those farmers. Then lack of technical advice were 11%. Then water quality problems, 8%. Predators were 23%. Then expensive feeds, 38%. Then the challenges to introduction of aquaculture in the region was lack of extension service to farmers who would wish to carry out the activity. Then fish feeds are still very expensive, as the country is still relying on imported fish feeds. Then shortage of fish fingerlings to stock the ponds. Lack of capital to construct these ponds. Then lack of adequate water sources to fill the ponds and water tanks. So these were some of my recommendations and conclusions. Train groups of farmers on aquaculture activities so as to reduce gang fishing in swamps. Then train farmer groups on construction of fish ponds. Establish fish breeding sites for quality production of improved fingerlings. Carrying out sensitization activities to educate the community on the dangers of gang fishing. Then support the youth to manage fish production and breeding for marketing. Then these were some of my references. Thank you.